All right, what is going on, everyone? Brian here, and this is my AEW Dynamite recap video for tonight's episode. Of course, it is a Wednesday night, so that means AEW Dynamite was on, coming off the heels of this past Saturday's AEW Revolution, where we saw Jon Moxley become the new AEW World Champion, plus a whole bunch more like Omega and Hangman Page retaining their tag titles over the Young Bucks. Nyla Rose retained her Women's Championship over Chris Statlander. MJF, uh, whether you like it or not, defeated Cody, plus a whole bunch more as well. So let's just get right into it. So this would be the fallout from that event on this episode of Dynamite. We started off with a promo from new AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. Basically, kind of like the same thing he said on Saturday, thanking the fans for driving and willing AEW to bring something different back and bringing pro wrestling back. He then talked about he didn't care who steps up to him. He's going to be a fighting champion. He'll fight with everything he's got. The former champion Chris Jericho would come out with the Inner Circle and basically make it clear. Or first he said that Moxley was a cheater because he was preparing for somebody who only could see out of one eye, not realizing that Moxley could see out of both of his eyes. Then he said about that before the end of the night, Moxley was not going to be able to walk out on his own accord. Of course, the main event of this show was Jon Moxley teaming up with Darby Allin to take on Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho. So then we move on to an 8-man tag that saw SCU and Colt Cabana, who made an appearance this past Saturday on the buy-in before Revolution, trying to save SCU from a Dark Order beatdown. They took on the Dark Order in 8-man tag team action. SCU and Colt Cabana would pick up the win when Colt Cabana got the victory for his team. Big Swole looking to make a statement in the AEW Women's Division. She took on Leva Bates. This matchup was pretty short. Big Swole won this one in quick fashion. Dr. Britt Baker was on commentary for this one. So, obviously looking to scout maybe some future opponents, as she also tries to make her way up the ladder in the AEW Women's Division. We heard from Cody, who talked about his loss at Revolution to MJF. He called out MJF to have him tell Cody that he beat him fair and square, that would be the only way he could accept losing, is if MJF came out there and told him that he beat him fair and square. But who would interrupt? Not MJF, but Hall of Famer Jake the Snake Roberts, who said he was tired of hearing Cody whine and complain about losing. He never whined and complained and moaned about losing a match. He then said he had a client that was coming and was going to help him, help Jake spread evil and stuff like that and take over AEW. Then he then said that his client was going to take on Cody in a match. Who knows when that match is going to happen? Who knows who Jake's client is? We'll have to wait and see. But and then Jake was like, I don't want a piece of the whole pie. He just wants Cody's piece, which is, I think, a business term or something like that, or something like that, a metaphor, if you will. So then we saw Pac defeat Chuck Taylor. I thought this was a really good match. Chuck Taylor made one mistake, however, near the end. He hit a version of a pile driver or something out of the corner on Pac, went for the pin, only got a 2 count, but then went up to the top rope to hit a moonsault. Pac moved out of the way and then locked in the brutalizer, and that was enough to make Chuck Taylor submit. Afterwards, Pac would go face to face with Trent, then Orange Cassidy. Then here comes the Lucha Brothers. They would wind up beating down the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy, and then Pac would get on the mic and say that their new group name is the Death Triangle, and they will be in action next week. So that'll be interesting to see how well those three work together as a team. We saw Jake Hager, who had Santana and Ortiz in his corner, go against QT Marshall, who had Dustin Rhodes and Brandy Rhodes in his corner. Apparently, Dustin and QT Marshall are going to team up, and Brandy is going to be managing them. They went one-on-one, and Hager, using the standing triangle to submission hold to, like he did on Saturday against Dustin, when he defeated Dustin at Revolution, he used the same move to defeat QT Marshall. Afterwards, they would beat down QT. They would beat down Dustin. Cody would make the save. He would get attacked with a steel chair by Ortiz. Then Matt Jackson would come out. Of course, Matt's brother Nick was not at Dynamite this week because of injuries he sustained in the tag title match at Revolution, and neither was Kenny Omega, but Matt Jackson tried to make the save. He got beat down, and then Hangman Adam Page would wind up saving the day and wiping out the Hager, Santana, and Ortiz out of the ring. So, and then him and Matt Jackson would go face to face. And if I remember correctly, I believe he flipped him the bird. So, obviously, there's still some tension there between Matt Jackson and Hangman Adam Page. Then in the main event, or before that, we heard from MJF, who talked about his victory at Revolution over Cody. He also talked about how he's going to become the number one contender to the AEW World Championship. He's going to remain undefeated, and he's going to become champion. We'll have to wait and see if that actually happens. Then, in the main event, it was supposed to be Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho versus Darby Allin and new AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. However, when Moxley was making his way through the crowd, 3 masked men attacked Moxley. They brought him into the hallway of the arena. Here it would be revealed that it was Hager, Santana, and Ortiz. And they would attack Moxley. They would try to knock him out. Of course, Jericho made it very clear at the beginning of the show that Moxley would either not leave on his own accord or Jericho would leave for 60 days and would not be there for 60 days. So that was all part of Jericho's plan. It wound up turning into a handicap match, Jericho and Guevara versus Darby Allin. Darby Allin, I will say this, he gave it the fight of his life. He tried everything. He did his best. But in the end, Jericho, when Darby went to go hit a dive through the ropes onto Jericho on the floor, Jericho would hit the Judas effect and then threw him back in the ring for Guevara to pin Darby 1, 2, 3. Afterwards, Moxley would come out with a steel chair, obviously still feeling the effects of the attack from earlier. Then he would get in the ring, fight off everybody. Then he would hit the Paradigm shift on Guevara, taking him out, but then wound up getting attacked by, I believe, either by Hager or Jericho. They would end up taking Moxley up to the top of the ramp and onto the staging area, and then would take a Santana, Ortiz, and Hager would take a page out of the Shield's playbook and use a triple powerbomb on Moxley, driving him through a table that was on the floor. And that is pretty much how it went off. Dynamite went off the air, with the Inner Circle standing tall, flipping off Jon Moxley while he laid in a heap. So obviously, Jericho and the Inner Circle not finished with Jon Moxley, not yet by a long shot. Plus, they announced for next week that Ortiz is going to face Cody. We're going to see Jurassic Express take on MJF, the Butcher, and the Blade in six-man tag team action. Death Triangle is going to be in action. And we were going to hear the rules and a special announcement regarding the upcoming AEW Dynamite episode, Blood and Guts. That'll be interesting to see who's going to be in that match, where there's two rings enclosed by a steel cage. So kind of like a War Games type match. So with that being said, I thought this week's episode of Dynamite was really good. Obviously continues some storylines going further. I really cannot wait to see who's revealed as the Exalted One for the Dark Order. And plus, I just cannot wait to see what AEW has going further as far as, where they're going to be heading with these storylines. So, with that being said, this has been my AEW Dynamite recap for this week's episode. Let me know what you guys thought of the episode in the comments below. As always, I am Brian, and thank you for watching.